Batman Arkham Knight is in many ways the best Batman Arkham game, but it also might be the worst. Over the last 3 weeks or so, I've been playing the Batman Arkham games a lot. I started with Arkham Asylum, which was actually my first time playing that game. Then I replayed Arkham City, Origins, and Knight in that order, although I replayed Arkham City again before finally getting to Knight. Batman Arkham Knight is a game that has received its fair share of criticism over the years. I don't know if it's necessarily a hated game, but it definitely isn't as well praised as the first two. Seeing as how I played all 4 games in such a short time window, I feel as though I am in the best position to judge the good, the bad, and the ugly in Batman Arkham Knight, and where it stands in the series. There are some subtle changes in this game you might not notice unless you played the previous games recently. Let's start with the good. The first category is a broad one, the combat. The combat mechanics are much better than in the previous games. They flow better. I don't know how to exactly describe it. If you play one of the first 3 games, then immediately play Knight like I did, you would notice a stark difference in the combat. I am by no means a video game expert, so I can't technically break it down for you. The mechanics just have a different, better feel to it. There were some other more concrete and specific additions that Arkham Knight has, such as the inclusion of medics who resuscitate enemies that you knock out, which adds to the challenge of the game. Whenever you're fighting thugs, they would sometimes charge at you or grab you. I liked how after you knock someone down to the ground, you can still punch them, as opposed to the first 3 games where all you could do was a ground takedown, which would leave you vulnerable to attacks from other enemies. I also liked being able to tag team with and play as other characters, namely Catwoman, Nightwing, and Robin, aka Tim Drake. They all had the same health and fighting capabilities as Batman. One thing that annoyed me about Arkham City was playing as Catwoman because she was not as useful as Batman. I could have used some upgrades to improve her, I know, but why would I waste upgrades on a character that I only spend a fraction of the game playing as? The second category is slightly related, stealth missions. One big improvement is the execution of silent takedowns. Something that always bothered me about previous games was how close you needed to be to enemies in order to perform a silent takedown. In Arkham Knight, you don't have to be standing quite as close. Here, for example, I was given the option to perform a silent takedown before I even got behind this guy. Additionally, you could perform a silent takedown from a vent, as opposed to the previous games where takedowns from the vent were always loud and attracted attention. You can jump down from vantage points to do silent takedowns as well, and you can perform silent takedowns from ledges. Much like vent takedowns, ledge takedowns were loud and always attracted attention in the prior games. Then, of course, is the addition of the Fear multi-takedown, which always came in handy when dealing with the crowd. The militia were smarter and better equipped than the enemies of prior games. They used drones, sentry guns, some of them could track you in detective mode, and some others could not be recognized in detective mode. The enemies would check vents, which is something they would do in previous games, but only if they saw an unconscious body. Here, in Arkham Knight, they would check if they suspected you were in the room. They would also throw grenades down the vent, which I think they would do in previous games, but the difference here is that the explosive would result in the vent being sealed shut, once again adding to the difficulty of missions. In general, the thugs and enemies you encounter in Batman Arkham Knight are a lot smarter than in any of the other games. I like how the story of Arkham Knight justifies why some of them are smarter. The militia are trained by the Arkham Knight himself and know what to expect when dealing with Batman. Overall, many of the improvements I've mentioned so far are only minor, small changes. All Batman Arkham games make small improvements here or there from the previous game, But Arkham Knight had the most of these small changes, which made a drastic difference in the playing experience. I know the Batmobile had some issues, and we'll get to that. Nonetheless, I still think it was a good addition. It was a little hard to control, but still fun to drive. I liked how it could be used as a tool to assist Batman in various situations. Rocksteady may have gone overboard with it, but again, we'll get to that when we get to that. So in this game, we could waymake, which resulted in arrows being on the road when the player is in the Batmobile. When you are out of the Batmobile, there would be a small rectangle that would tell you where to go, or the location of what you're looking for, such as a Riddler trophy. Something I did not like about Arkham City is how often I would have to check the map to know where I was going. I did not have this problem as much with Origins because I played that game on the Wii U, so the map was always right in front of me. The waymaking was not always perfect, however. There were multiple instances when the arrows would lead me to the wrong location and I had to find where I was supposed to go myself. In Arkham City, Rocksteady took us out of that cramped asylum setting and gave us a whole city to explore. That was expanded upon in both Origins and especially Knight. Gotham is a huge city with distinct areas, neighborhoods, and sights to see. It is rich with detail and swarming with stuff to find, such as Easter eggs, Riddler trophies if you're into that, or clues to cases. Last thing I will say about traveling is gliding. It was much more fun in this game, especially from high skyscrapers. You could glide for longer periods of time and be higher in the air. It felt really good. Is it fair to say Arkham Knight had the best side missions in the series? I barely did any of the side stuff in City nor Origins, but in Knight, I felt like doing almost everything. The firefighter rescues, catching the Man-Bat, the Two-Face robberies, Penguin arms sales, the militia missions, and the perfect crime. I don't want to go into detail about every single one, but just know each mission presented unique challenges, forced you to be creative and think outside of the box, and all have a go-find-it attitude which forces you to explore the gorgeous city. Speaking of which, the graphics in this game are amazing. I have nothing more to say on this point. 5 years later, and this game still looks beautiful. Especially because it's constantly raining. When you're gliding through the air past all the skyscrapers and tall buildings, it is absolutely stunning. The Batmobile is a double-edged sword. This is by no means a particularly unique criticism of Arkham Knight. I agree with the majority opinion that the Batmobile is overused. It's hard to believe that Batman does not kill, given some of the things you can do in the Batmobile. But maybe that's a nitpick. What is not a nitpick, though, is the overuse of those goddamn tank battles. I did not even think the tank battles were boring per se, but there was just far too many of them, and far too many instances of the Batmobile being required to complete a task. The Batmobile should have been treated like an additional gadget that would occasionally be necessary for specific scenarios, but not constantly throughout the entire game, just like any other gadget. And then there's the boss battle with the Arkham Knight himself. It's not good. There were about 6 of these ultra tank things that you had to take out individually via stealth. This took a long time because the tanks rarely separated from each other. And then after doing that, you had to scan Jason Todd's tank and then hit it like 5 times. And then after doing that, Jason's tank is given a full bar of health and you have to hit it at a specific point several times in order to defeat him, and finally complete the boss battle. Also, Every time you hit him or one of the other tanks, you had to run away and avoid getting hit because their tanks are OP. This whole boss battle was overly long and a huge pain in the ass. But okay, that boss battle may have sucked. At least now we should get a cool hand-to-hand combat boss fight, right? After all, the Arkham Knight is supposed to be Batman's equal and know all his moves, right? I wonder what the fight will be like. Will it be like the Mr. Freeze fight where we had to come up with multiple different ways to attack him? Or maybe like the Deathstroke fight, which had beautiful animation and fight choreography. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what comes next.
I did ask if it came in black, but then I thought, you just get all jealous. You didn't think I was gone, did you? No, you knew better. You get knocked down, you pick yourself up again. Huh? See, I learned that from an old friend.
Oh. It's just another Batmobile fight. Okay, but after this we should get a real fight, right? No? Oh, okay then. Yeah, in general, the boss fights in this game were pretty underwhelming. Good god, we beat Deathstroke and Hush in like one punch each. The Deathstroke boss fight was basically just an easier version of the already annoying Arkham Knight boss fight. To be fair to Arkham Knight, Arkham Asylum did not have the best boss fights either. However, I thought both City and Origins had some nice encounters. Arkham Knight was a step back in that regard. On to the last section of this video.